My name is Cameron Russell, and I've worked as a model for 15 years. At its best, modeling is a creative partnership. We must find a way to submit to someone else's direction, someone else's vision. When they tell us to close our eyes, to arch our backs, to open our lips, we do it for them. We breathe in for them, we breathe out for them. The highest compliment to a model is she'll do anything. And when they tell us to jump or to dance or to laugh, we do it completely unrestrained. Other times, it's being vulnerable enough to lead and expose real feeling. There is no script in modeling, so the model has to own their performance. People rarely spend time together without talking, but that's what modeling is. It's finding a way to communicate and to build a relationship and to be someone without words. The silence required by my job is often mistaken for being voiceless. The assumption is I have nothing to say. And sometimes I believed that too. There were many moments when I found myself speechless. Like when said, "We need to shoot a Lolita story on you." I thought, don't they know that's a story about rape? But I didn't say anything. Or the time kissed me. I was 16. It was so quick, I thought, maybe I did that fashion double kiss wrong. "Did he like you?" my agent said. Maybe, but we didn't work together again. The time massaged my shoulders and told me I was jailbait, and I had never been touched by a man before, so I wondered, is this what it's supposed to be like? When told me they wouldn't book me because I was a virgin. My job was to be their wildest dream, because we were constantly reminded, a million girls in line behind us waiting to take our place. The time said he wasn't sure he liked me until he watched me get naked to change looks. He said, "I thought you were too much of a prude like the other girl. She's never been kissed." Or when served alcohol to a minor, was more than twice my age, was my boss. I said no, but then I said nothing. Even when I knew were predators, I said yes, I'll work with them, because it felt like they all were. Or the time published pictures of me exposed, even though he promised not to. When I message him, he says he remembers our agreement, but it just didn't work artistically. "Yes, he's creepy," said an agent, "but he's a genius behind the camera." Pressured me to appear nude against my contract. I said no. He trailed his hand along my back and let me know that he was separated from his wife. And I smiled because money was on the line. I didn't consent to any of this. No permission was requested, so none existed to give. I didn't acquiesce. There were acts of protest, nor compromise. No dispute was ever formally acknowledged by both parties. Intermediaries struck the bargain in fashion. I think the correct word is tolerate. What is the difference between consenting and tolerating? Choice. Without tolerating these things, I couldn't have worked as a model. I couldn't have worked in this industry. I couldn't have gone to my professor's office hours in college. I couldn't go to parties. I don't think I could get on the subway. The question is, what choices do we have? What choices do we have when whether you wanted to be president of the United States or you wanted to be a movie star? Harvey Weinstein was the gatekeeper. He was one of the biggest donors to Democratic campaigns. He was a studio exec. The truth is, if you want to be a supermodel, if you want to be a partner in a law firm or an entrepreneur or an artist, or simply if you want to make a living, at the end of the day, too many of these gatekeepers are abusing their power. What is consent when the law protects him before it protects you? If you can't speak his name because you will be sued. if you can't speak his name because you will be fired, because you will be blacklisted, because you will be called a problem? What is consent when the fashion industry is 80% women, but we are almost never in charge? What is consent when worldwide 1 in 7 women who work outside the home in the formal economy are employed by fashion somewhere in the supply chain, but the majority of them don't make a livable wage? When most of these women are women of color, and yet the CEOs of all the biggest fast fashion companies and biggest luxury brands are mostly white men. They're all men. When 98% of agency-represented photographers are men. When 71% of creative directors are men. When there is actually almost no place where the women doing the bulk of this labor are in charge. What is consent when selling my body and my face made more money than my mother made building a company that changed an industry? Do you know other ways a young woman can come into this money, this access, this celebrity? In seeking to get behind the gates, I tolerated harm to myself, and I was complacent in an industry that exploits too many women. But I didn't think there were alternatives. I thought if I wanted to make change, I had to get to the top. I recognize now that many, many, many others speak out with far fewer resources and far more severe consequences. I think it would be irresponsible to come up here and not acknowledge all those who came before me for years working at a much greater personal and professional cost. Now, I have the luxury of not having to care what the gatekeepers think when I start to ask, why am I waiting for their gates to open? Why is it that we want little girls to have the jobs that these power-hungry men have? When I was a kid, I wanted to be president. I had my favorites. And when I was old enough to ask, I was told about their flaws that they were products of their time. So, for example, the fact that FDR had been responsible for Japanese internment camps was unfortunate. But we learned mostly about the New Deal. Only way later would I learn that the architect of labor protections was Frances Perkins, the first female cabinet secretary. Only later would I learn what an incredible influence Eleanor Roosevelt had. Only later would I learn about Pauli Murray, the black queer woman who was a longtime advisor to Eleanor, a longtime advisor to Thurgood Marshall, who in 1941 was the only woman in her Howard Law School class, whose student paper was the framework for the Brown v. Board victory. She knew exactly what was right and wrong. Was she not also a product of her time? Have you ever let yourself think, while you're watching the news, maybe we shouldn't all be looking at the predator in chief when he can't get a single useful thing done? I start to find my voice when I start to see these alternatives. When I realize the power of these men isn't the only power in the world. And more importantly, their power is not one that can heal or can love or can make the world more just or more free. The power of these predators is entirely structural. I know them. They cannot move people with their words or their work. They can barely make eye contact. They are not so creative or so uniquely talented. They are not irreplaceable. It's only because we have suppressed the vast majority that they appear that way. There are other photographers. Jody, Christelle, Yumna, Shaniqua, June, Jade, Zoe, Carlotta, Umaya, Amanda, Danielle, Amal, Gabriella. There are other stylists, Jessica, Anatoly, Jamie, Tess. There are other creative directors, Hawa, Ashley, and Yasmin, casting directors like Nafisa and Jillian, directors like Imani and Kate. I could do this all day, but we don't have time. A month ago, a friend and a fellow model sent me her story of sexual abuse on set and said, I want people to know what's happening so it doesn't continue. She asked me to share it anonymously on Instagram. Less than 48 hours later, inspired by her bravery, hundreds of individuals had come forward to share, to challenge the status quo. They told me of rapes and groping, requests for sexual favors, unwanted massage. They told me of agents who told them to stay quiet even if they were 14. And I saw the real power is making yourself vulnerable. Real power is hundreds coming forward, even if it's painful, even if they have nothing to gain. I received too many to post, so I asked for help. And again, I saw what real power can be. Real power was the 70 volunteers who continued to help break the silence by posting the voices of the most vulnerable. Even if it didn't get them the most likes, even if it made the people who are responsible for whether or not they have a job tomorrow uncomfortable. I'll tell you what real power is. Power is that we are the majority, and although we may not have the titles or the resumes or the most whiteness, straightness, maleness, or wealth, what we do have is of much greater value. We have the power to make a more livable world. Thank you. Thanks.